some cereal. With tacos. That's where he was sitting. I mean,
Thank you so much for listening. Good luck on your drafts this week.
Hello, Chair Garza. Mic check by Staff Member Guy Secker.
Hello, Teresa. How are you?
Wonderful. Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Am I on the right meeting?
I
Livable
believe so.
Places?
This is the Livable Places meeting. Yes.
Okay, it just shows that recording had started and it was early, so I wasn't sure.
I thought the same thing when I joined a minute ago.
Okay, well, be careful what you say. I know how you are.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I might be projecting just a little bit.
Actually, let me double check and make sure that we are on the right meeting. So I'm going to sign off for a second.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Honey, I'm here for the Livable Places meeting also, so.
Okay, good. It was just early and I was surprised that we were recording already and there were so many people online, so.
I know, I saw it too, so I kind of got confused. By the way, I like the way you run the meetings. I'm in a few of these.
Thank you. I'll take all the compliments I can get. Thank you.
No, I'm in a few of these and you do really a good job, so I appreciate it.
Oh, no, thank you. I appreciate that. You know, a little aside, I was in sales and marketing for a very, very long time and had offers to go into management. And I was like, you know, I don't see that happening to me. I'm not really good at managing people. I can run a meeting, but managing people, not so much, because I'm that guy. You know, those people who are managers and they're like, let me help you achieve the best that you can possibly be, right?
Sure, yes.
I'm not that guy, no.
Well, your sales background definitely comes out, so it's awesome.
Well, you know, we have to love what we do, and I certainly love doing this.
Yeah, I'm always, whenever I see you on any meeting, I'm like, oh, good. And then I was like, oh, you're not in charge of it, but oh, well. So I definitely appreciate it. I'm sure you don't get that very often, but.
No, I don't. But I will tell you, I've told the city that really, if I'm chairing a meeting, they should really send out a notice and let everybody know so they can know whether to come or not.
Well, I back that up. That's for sure.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it very much.
You're welcome.
Teresa, you're back?
Mr. Chair, it has been learned that Teams now offers an option for automatic recording when someone joins the meeting, so that's why we're recording early.
Okay, well, that'll work. I'll watch my tongue versus you watch my tongue. Somebody has to do it. All right. Well, we'll start on time, I guess.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Suvita Bandy here. We cannot
Suvita.
hear you.
Yeah, hi, Suvita. I had to turn it on.
Okay. How are you doing?
I'm wonderfully well, thank you. How about yourself?
Doing good. I hope you had a good long weekend.
Oh, I did. They're all really good. They're just like college. I don't know why. I've reverted back to being 18. I don't know what that means.
Okay.
I was just making note to Teresa that the recording has started, just so that you know, and she was telling me that as soon as we get online, we're recording. So just so you know.
It's in the setup these days. You can
Okay.
automatically set it up to record the moment the meeting starts. I
Okay.
think I did that to experiment, so sorry.
Well, no, that's quite all right. Yeah, but just remember, don't annotate the first 5 minutes of our meeting because it's
Okay.
just me and Teresa going back and forth.
Okay, thank you. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, you have the list of committee members, right? Nothing changed from the meeting in June, so it's the same.
I don't, as far as I know, yes, no meeting for that changes. No changes in June. Mike Dishberger.
Hello, Mike.
Hi,
Hello, how are you, sir?
Stevens.
I'm good.
Stevens, hello. Sandy.
Hi, are we starting?
We've got 1 minute before we have to wait for Margaret to put on her jacket so she looks like
Exactly. She looks so professional that way.
I was wearing a t-shirt and I put on a shirt, so I'm like, decorum above all else.
And then I got to scrunch the sleeves up just right. You know how it is these days. Yeah.
All right, well, we've got a little bit of time. We've got another minute before we start. I'm going to let Suvita tell me when to begin, and that's when we'll start.
Yes, sir. Give me 1 minute.
Of
Trying
course.
to set it up.
These are pictures of you I want the world to know that I learned from past.
Can you all see the screen?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Okay, thank you.
I showed 3 o'clock. Shall we begin?
Yes, sir, we can start.
All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have started the recording. It is now 3 p.m. on Tuesday, September 6, 2022. I'm Sonny Garza, co-chair of the Livable Places Action Committee. Commissioner Lisa Clark, co-chair, will be joining us later. I call this meeting to order as a virtual meeting using Microsoft's Teams. For those of you who are new, as a reminder, please mute yourself and turn off your camera until called upon by the chair for streaming video quality. If you are joining us by telephone, please use *6 to mute and unmute yourself. And committee members, I remind you that if you'd like to speak during the meeting, please use the raise your hand feature or unmute and state your last name so that you might be recognized by the chair. Committee members, please prepare to answer the roll call by unmuting yourself. Again, *6 if you're on the telephone. When I call your name, please respond with your last name and present. The co-chair, Sonny Garza, is present. Lisa Clark, co-chair, is not present. Bradley Pepper or Casey Morgan?
Present.
Bradley Pepper is present. Curtis Davis?
Present.
Curtis Davis is present. Thank you. Sherry Smith?
Present.
Sherry Smith is present. Dustin O'Neill or Sean Massack? Dustin O'Neill or Sean Massack? Not present. Fernando Zemaripa. Fernando Zemaripa. Jeff Kaplan. Present. Jeff Kaplan is present. Kathy Payton. Kathy Payton is not present. Kirby Liu. Kirby Liu is not present. Lloyd Smith. Lloyd Smith is not present. Luis Guajardo. Luis Guajardo.
Luis Guajardo's present.
Thank you. Matthew Camp.
Present.
Matthew Camp is present. Commissioner Megan Sigler. Megan Sigler is not present. Mark Nightingale.
Present.
Mark Nightingale is present. Mike Dishberger.
Present.
Mike Dishberger is present. Neil Dykeman.
Present.
Neil Dykeman is present. Omar Isfar. Omar Isfar is not present. Peter Friedman.
Friedman present.
Peter Friedman is present. Thank you, sir. Sandy Stevens.
Sandy Stevens is present.
Sandy Stevens is present. Scott Kubler. Scott Kubler is not present. Steve Curry.
Curry, present.
Curry is present. Toby Cole. Toby Cole is not present. Tyron McDaniel.
McDaniel is present.
McDaniel is present. Thank you so much. Yahaina Mahmood. Yahaina Mahmood is not present. Zion Escobar.
Escobar present.
Escobar is present, and I see that Megan Sigler is present as well. Megan?
Yes, present.
Present. At this point, I show 16 subcommittee members. Has anyone joined since I began the roll call? All right, hearing none, we will continue with our meeting. Thank you so very much, everyone. Again, happy post-Labor Day Tuesday. It is great to have you all here. I will now take a moment to outline best practices, which of course you have all heard ad nauseum, but you may have forgotten in the past 4 or 5 weeks. Again, After joining the meeting, please stay muted with your camera turned off to minimize background disruptions and help the quality of the meeting. If you wish to speak, enter your name in the chat and your name will be called in the order received. If you're using a cell phone, please use *6 to mute and unmute yourself. And when the chair calls any individual from the public to speak, please state your name and then spell your last name out loud. A verbal recording of this meeting is important. Please speak slowly and clearly, which is something I'm obviously unable to do. Chat may not be used by public speakers other than the committee members until the very end of the meeting let me start over again. Chat may not be used for anything other than public speaker requests or basic staff administration. Hand raise feature, again, is only to be used by committee members and staff to identify their interest in a comment. Public comments will be heard verbally at the end of the meeting. Each of those individuals signed up will have 2 minutes to speak. Again, as always, please disconnect or hang up all devices when we adjourn the meeting. I will now hand the meeting over to Margaret Wallace-Brown for the director's report. Director Wallace-Brown. You're muted, Margaret. Still muted.
You would think that after 2.5 years of doing this, I'd figure this out.
I gotcha. I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, so I want to start. Thank you, Chairman and committee. I want to start by once again thanking all of you for being with us today. This is, as we said very early on in this process, that it was a marathon, not a sprint. And about 2 years into it, you might be thinking that this commitment may never end, but I want to tell you, we are in the home stretch. You have done terrific work, and I have had the opportunity over the past several weeks to talk to a number of realtor organizations, industry groups, super neighborhood groups, with our 4 big ideas, so to speak, that we've been sharing with the psychographics. And I am getting terrific response from the people I talk to about some of the work you're doing. The idea of the cottage style development, the small lot development, is very exciting to most people, and they're very interested in seeing how this will shake out in Houston and being able to use it. 4-plexes, 6-plexes, that type of small development that we've talked about over a couple months with this group. Many people remember that they lived in 4-plexes while they were going to college, or and so they really, the idea of being able to bring those back to Houston, and garage apartments and ADUs. I want to give a very quick shout out before I close out to our group that worked on the ADU book. It has been recognized by the state of Texas, American Planning Association, the Texas chapter, and the Houston section. In fact, we have an announcement that'll take place next week that I really can't share, but good news from the Houston section. So anyway, we're very proud of that work and very happy, as Savita's showing you now, what I'm referring to. Very pleased that you all have stuck with us and that we are wrapping it up, and let's see what we can do today. Thanks. That concludes my report.
Wallace-Brown. All right, Savita, I believe that you are next.
Yes, thank you, Director, for that introduction, and committee members, good afternoon. This is Savita Bandy, and I took over the screen for a brief second to show you what our Director mentioned about the psychographics. So I hope you're able to see the screen, showing the 4 different types of housing developments, housing styles that we discussed in our committee meetings. These are being used to talk to neighborhoods and to interested groups in communicating the idea. So just sharing those with you. And if you have no questions with this, I'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the residential buffering ordinance.
Please do. Thank you, Savita.
Okay, thank you. 1 second while we share screens again. Thank you for bringing us back, Dipti. So today's first item for discussion is the draft residential buffering ordinance. we have worked on the draft ordinance and we request your input on the residential buffering ordinance. Just to recap, late last year, we discussed garage screening, lighting, residential buffering distance, and dumpster screening. These were some of the topics we discussed. And in working with legal, now we have a draft ordinance that we would like your input on. The plan is to take this draft ordinance to the Planning Commission by the end of the month. And I request committee's input in the next 2 weeks. If we can hear from the committee of any thoughts, suggestions, anything that you think is not clear, please do let us know. And we will appreciate your input on this. I'm going to wait and see if there are any questions about the residential buffering ordinance draft.
Savita,
Yeah.
before you continue, I just wanted to recognize Aubin Phillips Pickens, who is here from Yahina Mahmood.
Thank you.
Aubin, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I wanted to recognize you before we went any further. Thank you so much for attending the meeting today. All right, Savita, go right ahead. Pardon my interruption.
Okay. Any questions on the residential buffering draft ordinance, committee members?
Curtis Davis has his hand raised.
Okay, Mr. Davis.
Just a quick question. If we do have comments on the written draft, is the best thing to do is to mark it up with our comments and send it to you?
Yes, please. That will help.
When's the deadline for doing that?
2 weeks from now would be awesome.
Okay, thanks.
Matthew Camp also has his hand raised.
Yes, sir.
It was a similar question. If we were going to comment on that now, I just had a quick question about the buffering.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
It is, and I've got this late today and didn't get a chance to review really before, but is the abutting property also including properties across the street?
30 feet from the property. So across the street won't qualify, maybe because of the 30 feet distance, but that is a good question. We had significant discussion on across the street. Let me go back and look at that detail again, but right now it is defined as 30 feet from the property that is developed with these high-rise or mid-rise buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Again, Sunny here. Just Sandy, I see you with your hand raised. Tammy, are you doing people who are raising their hand?
Yes, sir.
Because I need you to do it because I'm not seeing it at all. I'm just seeing them one at a time. So if you would take care of that, I just wanted to give you a heads up.
Absolutely.
So Sandy Stevens, I believe, is next. You tell me.
Yes, she's the only one that has her hand raised right now.
Sandy, go right ahead.
It's just a quick question regarding whether or not this draft will be available to the public at some point. Is that 2 weeks out, Savita?
So right now, I requested that it be on the website. It's actually posted on the website. But I have to check if all the connections are working properly. And our plan is to actually open public comments for public to comment right away by the end of this week. People should be able to start commenting throughout the time when we will be at the Planning Commission presenting, and the 30-day comment period will open. So at least for next 6 weeks, it should be open.
Okay.
That's the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Savita, if I might, perhaps you might want to outline the next steps that, we would like the committee's comments within 2 weeks, whatever date that is, what date we expect to be on the Planning Commission, what the 30 days might look like, and then send that in an email to the whole committee.
Sure, Director, we'll do that.
Thank you.
Right. Anyone else? Questions?
There are no other hands raised.
All right. Thank you, Tammy. Savita, I think we can go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. So the next item for discussion today is reduce building line requirements for shared driveways. With the recommendation on overall housing topics, If you remember, in May and June, we went over overall housing recommendations, and during that time, we went over this topic briefly. But as we started working on the amendments, team realized that this needs a special mention and input from the committee. So we thought we wanted to get your input on this. Per the ordinance today, there is a 10-feet building line for any structures and 17-feet garage building line, which is a performance standard. But for properties that take access from a shared driveway, there is another performance standard of reduced front building line of 5 feet. Ordinance allows for performance standards, which is actually an opt-in when taking access from shared driveway. Single family homes that take access from a shared driveway, if they meet all the listed 3 conditions, they can opt into the 5-foot front building line. One of those requirements is that each unit has the front door. Sorry, somebody has me on speaker, I think.
Yes, everyone, please mute. If you haven't already, *6 to mute, please. Thank you.
One of the requirements is that if the development is fronting on a local street or a collector street and all of the units are taking access from a shared driveway, the units that front the street qualify for a 5-foot reduced front building line when the units have a front door that faces the public street and provides a pedestrian access to the public street. So those conditions have to be met for the front lot to have a reduced 5-foot front building line. Next slide, please. Here is an illustration to convey the same. It also mentions that when the property is at the corner or if the property has double frontage, then the pedestrian access may be provided from either street. And the image shows the illustration. Next slide is about the intent. So per chapter 42, the intent of the current ordinance is to foster a design framework applicable to the city and assure that the pedestrian use of sidewalks is not impeded. So what's the issue? Why are we here discussing about this today? Here is an example to show the difference between what was intended with the ordinance language and what it turns out to be in real sometimes. In the left image, you can easily tell that the front door is facing the street and should qualify for that 5-foot front building line, which is a performance standard opt-in. In the right image, there is a door that faces the street, but it is fenced off with no pedestrian connections. Also, it is not the front door, as you can see that the front door along, as you can see a front door along the shared driveway. So this development does not meet the intent of the ordinance to qualify for the reduced 5-foot front building line. However, there is some challenge with the interpretation of the front door. Let me show you some more examples. In these examples also, there is a door along the street that is fenced off or is only meeting the letter of the ordinance and not the intent. Next slide. Intent of the ordinance is actually to have units face the street with front doors and pedestrian connections so that the streets become safer, walkable, and promote neighborhood-friendly environment. On the left side, you can see the home with its front door, versus on the right side, you can see a home with a door along the street. Challenge here is that the front door is not defined in the ordinance, so it has been subject to interpretation. I would like to receive your feedback on what features can be used to define the front door more clearly and emphasize that the 5-foot front building line, which is a performance standard, is only applicable if the homes face the street with the front doors and not just a door. In other cities, there is language that emphasizes porches, design features that defines the front of the house and thus making the ordinance clear. I would like your input on defining the front of the house or the front door. Committee members, any comments?
All right, committee members, here is just my take. Savita, go back to the last slide. You know,
Yeah.
as Savita said, one of the things we're trying to accomplish here is eyes on the street to make sure that we have a walkable environment and actually to promote safety. Now, if you look at the top, I guess the top two in this particular photograph, or the slide rather, you can see that it looks like these doors are either open into a garage or open into, they don't open up into living space. They don't look like you can see the windows, so on and so forth. Whereas the bottom two do in fact look like they've got, you know, green space, trees, and an actual front door that goes into either like a living area, well, a living area, which would that be a stairwell or not. And that I think was what we're trying to accomplish. And in talking to permitting, it seems like there are applicants who are coming in and saying, here's the front door, when in fact it leads to the garage or leads to a storage, you know, space or something. So again, what we need is language that will help us get to what we want to accomplish. Also, I see that Kirby Liu is here, so let's let the record show that Kirby is now in attendance. Kirby, did you have a question or a comment?
Yes. So it looks like on the bottom left example, it's kind of like a corner porch. So is it the opening that's more important, or the orientation? Like, because it's a corner porch, it's still kind of front door-esque in a way.
Yeah, it's not actually facing the street, as you say.
Right, the door itself is not facing the street. So
Right.
in that event, you know, because I can kind of gather from the way this elevation looks that this is probably, you know, there's a garage basically right beyond that porch. And so if you try to get the door to face the street, you're opening to the garage essentially. So I don't know. In this, you know, the bottom left example, I think is a good one where it's like it's fulfilling maybe the intent, but not the letter of the ordinance. So that's something to consider.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Kirby, for that point. And the idea of the slide was to show different kind of examples where there were attempts to meet the letter of the ordinance. But because there is not much clarity in the intent or the language that helps define that intent, I think that's what is lacking. So that's where we need your help in what can we include as elements of design, because this is a performance standard, to kind of make it clear what do we want with the ordinance, how do we want the ordinance to speak to this, is what the discussion today is.
All right,
Next.
Tammy, our next speaker.
Next is Curtis Davis, followed by Zion Escobar.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, go right ahead, please.
Sure. In terms of the language, the goal is to articulate a set of design objectives about the urban environment. And I think to the extent that an ordinance can reference examples, that might help. But if you go back to the slide prior to the one that you have on the screen, I'd like to make a point about this. The image on the left, even though the architecture presents a face to the street and it presents livable spaces to the street, that may or may not meet the design objectives. The door and the doorway and the entry and the gate, which looks to be a little offset, but it may also serve that door, serves access to the street. One could argue that this meets the ordinance, but one could also argue if those windows were much smaller than they are, that it doesn't. So architecturally, the building has a front face to the street. If we are concerned about safety and security, that means eyes, people, entry, signs of daily life fronting the street. And how you put that in an ordinance, I'm not sure. But one might make reference to a narrative that would cover it in more detail and examples, but that's the limitations of trying to cover this by ordinance. But my concern is that even a front door into a proper space on plan could be into a building that presents anonymity to the street and not serve the design objectives. That's my point.
Thank you. All right, Tammy, our next speaker is.
Next is Zahn Escobar, followed by Peter Friedman.
Thank you. Don, are you there?
I am, and you know, I guess part of what I was going to comment on, I think it kind of piggybacks on what Mr. Davis was mentioning, and what I was going to say is when it comes to safety and eyes on the street, the door intent, most people's doors are completely opaque. And so there, you know, I don't know that the eyes on the street, if a door is going to give that to you, especially when everyone kind of enters from a garage primarily, even if they have a door facing the street, because of the car-centric culture. But to me, there should be some factor in there for windows, because to me, the image on the left that has more windows that are at the ground story level provides more eyes on the street than a door being the criteria. And also architecturally, you end up with these very odd things that we saw in some of the other examples of people trying to place a door in a very odd spot. Just to get that checkbox, I would rather see lots of windows and open light, because you actually get eyes on the street. People are going to look through their windows. They don't look through their doors to see what's happening on the street. They typically don't enter through their front doors if their primary access is through a garage in these types of structures that we're looking at here. So I feel like windows, large windows of an equal square footage of a door, if you're trying to be nuanced, or just drop the door as the thing altogether, because the door does not give you visibility.
Okay, what are your thoughts on the door or that window opening onto living space versus like a garage or storage room?
Meaning it has to.
Would we make that a criterion? Pardon me?
Like meaning it has to face the street primarily.
No. I just mean if we say there's a window of a good size, do we say that window has to be to a living space versus a garage or a storeroom or even a bathroom? Do we make that distinction? Or just a window?
No, that's a lot of nuance that I don't know. Someone in the legal department might have to tease that one out. But I do think that the intent is served, as far as if it's a livable space, then you're going to have people who may use it. If it's a dead storage space, then it's really a dummy window, just like a dummy door.
Okay, great, thank you. The next speaker?
Next speaker is Peter Friedman, followed by Mike Dishberger.
Peter, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm looking at these four pictures here, and I'm not really seeing where any of these versions add any real layer of security to a walker or to a pedestrian. I can definitely see different architectural styles if we're trying to create a different kind of look to the street, but you have the same way all the cars are exiting that through the common driveway. You kind of have those blind spots on either side as you pull out, and unless somebody's standing by the window or by their front door, I don't really see any added security there. To answer the question asked, you could have it as opens up into a conditioned area. Interior space is typically conditioned, so you could use that as a requirement. Or if you have a sitting area or an architectural area where a porch or a deck is, would probably be more utilized. But I'm still trying to kind of wrap my mind around what the purpose of that is. If it is security, how that works, but if it's more architectural and kind of appearance, I think I follow that a little bit better.
It is definitely to create that urban feel and to make the neighborhood safer, because I'll be much more feel safe to walk along a street where the homes are facing versus if it's a blank wall with not even windows or doors. It won't feel as safe to walk. So in terms of walkability and creating a neighborhood character for the street, I think those were the ideas. That was the concept when this was introduced, is to make the streets more walkable and create that safe neighborhood feel.
Savita, I'll throw in that old Motel 6. We'll leave the light on for you. Having downstairs windows that are lit makes it look more hospitable and actually safer when you're walking down the street. It may be, in your head, but it does make it look like you could yell at a door or window and have someone come to it. So lights on the street, I think make a big difference. Again, as you say, even if it's just for the appearance of hospitality and safety. So yeah, I think that makes sense.
In fact, lighting was one of the features used in a city that I read. I think it's a city in Florida that uses lighting and also some design features as some of the things that could be used to define that front facade.
Okay. All right. Tammy, our next speaker, Mike Dishberger.
Yes, Mike Disberger, followed by Kirby Lou.
Right.
Oh, hi. I'm like Freeman. I'm having issues with, you feel safe walking down the sidewalk because there's some windows there. It's funny, these 4 homes that we're showing here, they all have wrought iron fences 6 feet high protecting their houses because they're all scared to death of crime. And anyway, this is an opt-in, so I'll accept the opt-in that we get a smaller building on if we do this. I would, however, say the front door to me is not the big issue. Having the front door on that particular side is okay, but like Kirby Lou said, that corner, the door is pretty much on that side. You walk in from there, and there's a walking. I mean, that's real close. And the other example I have that we do in our houses is where that door is. We inset it in about 3 feet into like a little square, and then the door goes sideways because people, well, they don't want a door with glass in it facing the street. Now, there's the homes I build have windows on the side that you're talking about and would accomplish all that. So I'm not sure you have to actually see the door. That as long as you can, the door is within so many inches of that part that's parallel to the road. And there's probably something you said, if you're going to do this, there has to be take your square footage or something with the number of windows, some kind of square footage on windows, because the ones on the upper right are kind of ugly. I would never build that. Those aren't mine, luckily. There's not a lot of windows there. It's just there's 3, right. and one of them's a glass block window for a shower. That's obvious. Yeah. So obviously you want to have your entry door needs to walk into a conditioned space. So that's number 1. I agree with everybody on that. And second, I'd like a little more latitude on that. I've taken the 5 foot occasionally. Most people don't want their front yard to be their backyard, so that's why it's been difficult for us. But I would highly suggest that corner that you see on the bottom left be an acceptable practice. If it looks like it's probably within 18 inches of that corner, and the same if you have like a little, I hate to describe it as a square, but you probably know what I'm talking about. You walk in and you take a right or you take a left to get inside the house. It feels more safe for our people. If they have a door facing the road, they're going to want solid wood door. That's what they're going to want. They're not going glass. And anyway, those are just some comments on that. It's again, as long as it's an opt-in, not as big a deal. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mike. Tammy, I show Kirby Lou next.
Kirby Lou and then Megan Siegler.
Great. Thank you. Kirby.
Just to piggyback off of what Mike and Zion was saying, maybe the idea of the door is kind of a red herring in a way, and it's maybe like it's really what we, I've seen in other municipal codes where people set even like maximum amount of glazing and minimum amounts of glazing. Maximum amount of glazing for fire reasons, but minimum amount of glazing for kind of this urban feel. So basically, in order to kind of avoid having these gray zones and people trying to, almost fake where the front door is, maybe we just set like, okay, a minimum amount of your elevation's square footage needs to be glazing. And also to add to that about lighting, it's like, it's not so much that you have like, let's say a peeping Tom in the window at all times trying to see what's going on the street. It's more so just to have the ambient light from the building kind of illuminate the sidewalk in addition to street lighting. So, buildings themselves are an important source of light to light the public realm in a way. So it's like if we put enough amount of glazing on that front facade, whether there's a front door there or not, as Ian was saying, your front door is often solid. It's like that may be enough to address the issues. And I know that's been done in other cities before.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, I was saying thank you. Those are great ideas. having the entrance recessed a little bit is something that was used in other ordinances. And also air-conditioned space, that it gives you access to air-conditioned space, and using different elements to draw emphasis to the entrance of the house were some of the things that I read in other ordinances.
Okay, great. Yes, thank you so much. All right, Megan, are you there?
Yes, I think I agree with a lot of what I heard, but also I think some of the reality is on that first floor footprint, often it is only just the garage and maybe a hallway with a stair going up or even a flex room. So, you know, all the amount of windows, front door, the reality is you're not going to have a lot of action on that first floor in a typical 3-story townhouse. It usually is just the garage, hallway. The living isn't normally there.
Yes.
And so just to knowing that, I mean, is it more about the facade then? Because is it actually safety if that whole that most of that area is garage?
Right. So
Can we go to slide 10, please? Sorry, Mr. Chair. Can we go to slide 10, please?
Do please. Go ahead, Savita.
No, I was just, please go ahead and comment. I was just wanting to show an example where it's the stairs actually. There is a front door, but then actually the front is the stairs, and maybe behind those windows are actually where the stairs landing is, and then there are rooms. So the left image is a good example where you can see that the stairs are used in the front. So
yeah, so Megan, what I was thinking about is, you know, the typical layout, at least in my experience, is, you know, the 1017 is garage, front door, the front can face, you know, straight in or to the right, so to speak. Anyway, and then behind there's a hallway. It goes up the stairs. Sometimes, I think usually there is a bedroom and a bath. So garage, bedroom, bath, stair, front door.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah, I think that I've seen that often. Yes.
Yeah. That's what I see mostly. So my thought was, if you look at the, I guess which one, if you look at the one on the left, all right. So, and that was the driveway, and the door actually faced not the front, but faced the shared driveway. That would make perfect sense because the door would be closest to us, then the driveway, and the door would typically the doorway would face the shared driveway. So I'm saying, could we not just tweak it? And like I said, if they all face the driveway, could that one not be tweaked to face the street without changing literally anything else? Now, you wouldn't be able to put the windows there, or you would, because there would be a stairwell, you know?
Yeah. And I know we have, and going way back, there were times where, I mean, you want that side elevation. Sometimes it looks better with the door. I mean, sometimes you are doing it because architecturally it looks better, it feels better. So there are definitely ways, I think, to make it look good or look like a front elevation, which is, you know, the entrance door, windows, possibly a front porch, sideway gate, you know, light. Even in the old days, there would have been a mailbox, but now those are all in a
Right.
back in the back.
Gathered together in one place.
Yes. But I think you can do that, but I don't know. I heard like this big security, you know, you're gonna have you can achieve the look, but I don't know if you achieve the safety by doing that.
Okay, that's certainly reasonable. Yes. Savita, did you have anything to comment on that?
no, I'm just grasping everything. Thank you for the comments.
Yeah,
we can go back to the last slide.
Actually, several of our other speakers have said that. Are we, you know, is it a little bit of a red herring? Does it look safer, but it's really just not, you know? Which we all know that the living space in most of these 3-story townhomes is on the second floor, not on the first. So that's a fair statement, I think.
In most of the floor plans, at least that I have seen, there is at least one room, maybe not immediately next to the entrance, next to the shared driveway, but there is garage and there is a room in the back and a restroom, like a guest room or something. If that is the situation, maybe for that room, the entrance could be emphasized. So that is an option.
And just by the way, anecdotally, I just want to let everyone know, I live in a 100-year-old house with the original door, and it's all glass. It's crazy. So anyway, just, you know. All right, so I saw Curtis Davis and then Kirby Lou. Tammy?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Mr. Davis again, go ahead.
I think we're struggling here in terms of how to develop language in the ordinance. And I think the ordinance should focus on the design objective. The design strategy or tactic, that is specifically what you do, whether there's a porch, whether there's a niche, whether the door in the niche fronts the street or is at an angle to the street, how that works and gives a perception of occupation along the street is a design question and can only be finally assessed when you look at the product, because we are talking about an image on the street. We're not saying you have to have porches with a porch swing and somebody sitting out there. That's what the real occupancy is. You know, if it were in Brooklyn, it would be stoops. But again, it's not that there's a person on the stoop, it's that the stoop provides the image of occupancy, which in turn gives a sense of safety on the street, whether it's there or not. Some streets in Brooklyn aren't safe ever, and some are, and some are to be. So I think what I would suggest, because we don't have design guidelines, which is a difference for the ordinance, and maybe there could be a companion set of guidelines that are referenced in the ordinance that might be safe harbor design strategies for the developer or builder to follow, and that the ordinance is more broad that would allow for alternatives that we can't necessarily envision, with the understanding that the fronts of these buildings should provide a sense of occupancy so that the street has the feeling that someone might come walking in or out of that door or in and out of that property at any given moment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for those comments. And I think because this is an opt-in, this is a performance standard, so it's not required for somebody to do it. But if a development wants to choose to have a 5-foot reduced building line, then there is a criteria to be met. So it is possible to add some design elements if we need to emphasize that front door or that appearance of a front door or porches. So that's the discussion. So definitely the points that you brought up are very helpful.
All right, I show Kirby Lou next. Tammy, correct?
Correct.
All right. Kirby.
Just one thing. Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I just was, I'm driving through Edo right now. And one thing I just thought of is, what about corner conditions? You know, basically at the end of the day, if you give this kind of ordinance out there, no one wants to not maximize the full economic potential of the land. So people are going to try to get this 5-foot setback almost by default, to make it sort of economically viable. But I'm just wondering, for corner conditions where you have two streets intersecting, and you know, in cases like Edo where it's not clear which is the main street and which one's the, let's say, side street, or which street you should privilege, I can just imagine people trying to kind of gamify the thing to try to get, let's say, like, change their front door on the last unit in like a row of units, so that, you know, it's going to look really weird, but that's going to give them an additional 5 feet on two sides, you know. So that's one of the things that I just, you know, think that that's something worth thinking about. Also with, you know, in a situation where you have row houses and what have you, again, in a corner street, and then you have, let's say, 8 out of 10 houses face the street in that development, but the 2 end units are facing the other 2 streets. You know, it's like, where does the building line, you know, bonus, I guess, come into that kind of situation?
Do you have any recommendations, Mr. Liu?
This is kind of why I prefer the idea of the amount of glazing on a facade to capture the extra square footage, the extra land square footage, rather than trying to say that it has to be something that's connected to the front door. So I do think that, you know, again, like the amount of light itself is going to make the street feel safer. And, you know, that would probably help, you know, make it so that people don't try to gamify the system when they have corner conditions and make things look really weird because of that.
Mr. Chair, may I ask one more question?
Yes, go right ahead, Suvita.
When you say glazing, do you mean transparency or you mean lighting? I'm not very clear what you meant when you said glazing.
Glazing meaning glass, or it could be any kind of, you know,
transparency, basically.
Yes, transparency. Even the glass block stuff for showers. You know, I'm not against that. I mean, it doesn't have to be full transparent. It just, you know, needs to allow light from the building to spill out on the street.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right, Tammy, I don't show anyone else with their hand up. Do you?
No, I do not.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, are we done with this subject? Any more comments or questions? All right, then hearing none, that we'll go ahead and move on. Suvita, go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. Those are all great ideas. So we will, when we come back with the ordinance, you will see recommendation of all these ideas, and we'll prepare language reflecting that, because it's not actually changing the ordinance. It's just providing more clarity is what this will help us do. With that, I'm going to jump to the next topic on the agenda, which is street widening requirement. For shared driveway developments in Chapter 42, there is a requirement that the street paving must be widened while developing, doing shared driveway developments. And to present this topic, I would like to invite Mushin Fang. So Mushin,
Just
take
briefly,
over.
if I may interrupt, Peter Friedman has his hand raised. I'm not sure.
Mushin, before you begin, let me ask Peter Friedman. What do you need, Peter? What's going on?
Hey, I'm sorry. I wanted to jump back to something that was something I saw in the buffering. I don't have a question about the buffering, but you had there was a part on that mentioned the multifamily residential. I think it was a different set of number of homes. Is that now been passed? Is that actually in the rules, or is that part of this whole buffering process, and that's all going to be added in together?
That's a great question. So let me answer that. When we were handling buffering late last year, at that time, buffering was the first topic we handled, and we referred to it as small scale multifamily developments. As we progressed with the committee's work, we came about discussing the multi-unit residential, and we, with the committee's work, ended up doing the small scale multifamily, giving it a name, which is multi-unit residential, which is 3 to 8 units if they meet a certain criteria. So that MUR, multi-unit residential, and single family, the buffering is from these two types of developments. So essentially, the small scale multifamily development is the MURs, which is up to 8 units on a unrestricted property. Did I answer your question?
You did on the definition of it, and I'm happy to see that. What my question is that in place now, or is that
It's
something
not.
that, okay.
It's not in place. It will, the first reference to MURs is coming with the buffering ordinance, and further performance standards for MURs will come with the housing ordinance draft, which is still going on. So no, nothing has passed yet. You are the first ones looking at it.
Thank you so much. Sorry to jump in. I didn't want to get
No, not at all.
too far
Not at
ahead.
all. Thank you so much. All right, Mushin, are you there?
Yes.
All right, are we ready for you?
Yep.
Okay, then let's go. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Livable Places Committee members. This is Musian Huang with the Planning Department. Committee members, today I will, as Suvita mentioned, we would like to share with you about the street widening requirement, the challenge we have experienced. During the implementation of the city ordinance, we realized that some of the current rules, such as street widening requirements, encourage one housing type over the other. Therefore, in this session, we would like to go over this challenge we have experienced in the process of implementing the street widening requirements and get your input on how to overcome this challenge so that we could equitably promote different types of housing and help the city grow sustainably and responsibly. So firstly, I would like to provide you a brief background of the street widening requirements. The current street widening requirements we are implementing reflect the ordinance amendments adopted by the City Council in 2013. Do we lose the PowerPoint?
I'm not seeing the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
No.
Sorry, we had a glitch. Give me 1 minute, please. We are back on track.
All right, Mushin, we can see it now.
Sure. So back to 2012, the Planning Commission initiated a subcommittee to explore options to facilitate compact developments in the city. The subcommittee made recommendations to amend ordinance requirements related to shared driveways, building lines, and urban versus suburban developments. In 2013, the City Council adopted the ordinance amendments proposed by the committee. One of the amendments requires that a shared driveway shall intersect with a public street with minimum 18 feet wide pavement. So next slide, please. The table on the screen summarizes the current street widening requirements for all commercial developments and single-family residential developments with shared driveways and permanent access easements, PAEs. Specifically, if the existing pavement in front of the property is more than 20 feet wide, no widening or no parking signs will be required. If the existing pavement is more than 18 feet but less than 20 feet, no widening will be required, but the developers will need to place no parking signs on both sides of the entire block. If the existing development is less than 18 feet, there are two options. Option one is to widen the pavement in front of the property to 18 feet and place no parking signs on both sides of the entire block. Option two is to widen the pavement in front of the property to 20 feet. According to the fire department, minimum 20 feet pavement is required to ensure fire trucks and emergency vehicles have enough room to maneuver when an emergency happens. 18 feet pavement will work only if there are no on-street parkings obstructing the roadway. Next slide, please. So these street widening requirements are mainly applicable to streets with roadside ditches. Most curb and gutter streets have pavement wider than 20 feet. The intent of these requirements is to improve fire protection and traffic safety. However, over the time, we realized that implementing these requirements does not help to improve fire protection or traffic safety in most cases. Furthermore, the current rules indirectly encourage one housing type over the other. The street widening requirements apply to single-family residential developments with shared driveways, but they are not applicable to the front-loading single-family residential developments. As a result, developers are indirectly incentivized to develop front-loading single-family residential homes. For example, the developer originally subdivided a lot into 3 smaller lots taking access from a shared driveway with a lot layout on the left. After the original plan was approved, the developer realized that he is required to widen the pavement in front of his property with this layout. But he doesn't need to widen the pavement if he develops front-loading lots like the lot layout on the right. As a result, he resubmitted the plan and changed the lot layout to front-loading lots. This is another example. Next slide, please. Whoever running the presentation, would you please change to the next slide?
Mushin, can you see the slide with the shade driveway? Is this what you wanted?
Yes, yeah, this is the one. Good, thank you. So For this example, for the same site, if the developer subdivides the tract into 11 front-loading lots as indicated on the left, he is not required to widen the pavement. But if he develops the site with a shared driveway, he could only create 10 lots and will be required to widen the pavement along the entire property frontage, like the layout on the right. In other words, the left design creates higher density and bring more cars to the street, but it doesn't need to widen the pavement. As a result, the developer chose the front-loading design over the shared driveway design. Next slide, please. This slide
Is coming.
okay.
Is there a glitch? Because I can see the slide.
Yeah, no, we're seeing the same one with a shared driveway behind versus the 1017s.
No, I'm seeing the new one. I'm seeing the new one.
There
Okay,
it
now
is.
it comes. Okay. This slide illustrates a shared driveway development and a front-loading development located along the same street. The shared driveway development in red is required to widen the street pavement, but the front-loading development in blue is not required to widen the pavement. Along the same street, only a portion of the roadway is widened. The piecemeal widening doesn't help improving fire protection and safety. Next slide. In brief, the current street widening requirements create multiple challenges. From the planning standpoint, it indirectly encourages the front-loading single-family residential developments over the shared driveway developments. From the infrastructure standpoint, the piecemeal widening approach not only creates inconsistent pavement width, but also potentially impact the roadway drainage negatively. From the fire protection standpoint, the piecemeal pavement is unable to improve fire protection. There's no easy way to overcome this challenge. Next slide. At this point, we could think of two potential alternatives to address the challenges to some extent. The first option is to remove the minimum 18 feet wide pavement requirement for shared driveways from Chapter 42. By taking this requirement away from Chapter 42 doesn't mean that we remove this requirement. The street widening requirement will remain in the IDM. The pros of this approach is to remove the infrastructure requirement from the pre-development stage and allow Houston Public Works to explore other options and address the issues during the permitting stage. However, this approach does not address any of the challenges at this time. The second option is to apply the street widening requirements to all new single-family residential developments, including the front-loading developments. This approach will promote different types of housing equitably, and the street pavement will be widened at a faster speed. However, this is still a piecemeal approach. We will continue to have inconsistent pavement, and the infrastructure and fire protection challenge will remain for some time. So committee members, we know neither of these two approaches are ideal. We think the second approach is more feasible than the first one because it overcomes the planning challenge by removing the incentives for one housing type, and it will address the infrastructure and fire protection challenge at a faster speed. We would like to hear your input and explore ways to address these challenges. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mushen. Okay, committee members, before we begin, let me ask Mushen, give us a definition, or rather, give us a walkthrough of what the first alternative means. In other words, taking it out of Chapter 42 and leaving the requirement within the IDM. What does that mean to builder developers?
So basically, it just stay as it is today. It just remove it from the ordinance because it's a pre-development stage requirement. However, as long as it's in the IDM, whenever the new development come in, they are required to comply with the rules. So that will stay as it is today, but just technically remove it from the ordinance.
Okay. All right. So,
Mr. Chair, thank you, Mushen.
Yes.
That's a very good explanation. The one point I would like to add is to say that when it is a Chapter 42 requirement, it becomes a conditional approval on the plat. and there is no real way for us to figure out if the paving is done, and we have to rely on the fact that it will be done and record the plat. So technically, when the plat is getting recorded, the condition is not being met, which is a Chapter 42 condition. So that's a challenge. It's like approving a plat when it doesn't meet the ordinance kind of issue. So it's not solving the challenge that Mushin brought up, which is inequitably benefiting one development type over the other. It's not addressing that, but it's making the process more feasible. The platting process goes a little bit faster.
Okay, all right. All right, so I want to make sure that everyone understands what the real differences are going to be, you know, one versus the other. So that, I think that's a reasonable explanation. So let's open the floor up for questions and comments. And Tammy, I see Mr. Davis with his hand up.
Correct.
All right, Mr. Davis, go ahead.
This is a great example where policy bumps heads with municipal capital planning. If by block, any development within the block is required to meet that widening, since we're concerned about safety, fire safety and whatnot, and the developer is required to make the widening, and it might create these problems that you've outlined. Rather than developer having to actually do it, could the developer contribute to a fund? And because this is such a broad citywide activity, again, I'm dipping into municipal finance, the city could float a bond to fund these projects as they come along. So if one developer is impacting a block, that moves the project up on the list. The amount that they pay is contributing to the fund. The fund is capitalized through a bond and is eventually replenished through the payments that developers make as they build within this context. Again, it goes beyond the scope of this ordinance, but I don't think we ought to be shy and timid in our recommendations around capital planning, because there's a lot of other capital needs around stormwater management and the like, and to burden developers with this to end up with incomplete solutions seems to be problematic when in a sense we're trying to improve the infrastructure to support denser development. And this could be done on a block by block basis. And the initial project could initiate expenditure from the fund, the capital improvement fund, to make that change.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, anyone else? Developers, I know you have ideas here. Mike Dishberger, go ahead, please.
You knew Sonny would have to talk about this. I have run across this before. I would pick alternative number one, just take out of Chapter 42. Traffic picks this up when you do your plans. You got little, usually it's little pieces of the road. It's not the whole road. It's pieces of broken away. At the end of the day, this is a city of Houston problem with really bad roads and some old neighborhoods. Rice Military is famous for this. Doing one right now. But I think everyone's going to fool themselves on the pros on the second alternative, saying street payments be widened at a faster speed. No, what's going to happen is, you saw those examples that you guys showed. We're not going to build anything on that street. We're going to go, let's go find something else better. It's kind of like the 500-year floodplain, 2 feet and above. While some of it's still being done, most builder developers are just avoiding the land. And it's not going to happen faster. That's a pipe dream. And the piecemeal approach is horrible either way, but that's kind of where we're at here, unless, like Mr. Davis said, a fund is set up to do block by block and do it. Because if you have me do it, it will not be done as good as the city of Houston. And you're showing a beautiful example here with curbs. Most of it's open ditch. That's where the problems are. It's open ditch streets. It's not curb streets like this. I know this street, but this is unusual. It's almost always open ditch. And so I would just, you guys, for Chapter 42, y'all don't need to be dealing with this. It's, as you said, how can you enforce it? How do you know? You're going to have to really spend a lot of effort to find out if it ever got done. And but traffic does pick it up. It does bring up a secondary point, not part of this conversation, but you pointed out the no parking signs. I mean, the 18 to 20 feet, you're taking away a whole side of parking. So you're asking us to build shared driveway projects. I take an acre land, build that, have all this street parking, and then they pop no parking signs up there because it's between 18 and 20 feet. That doesn't seem right either. That should be changed. That should come out of the IDM or whatever ordinance that is in. And if I'm going to go the effort to build a shared driveway project, then we need to have that street parking because we took a lot of parking away by not doing front loaders. Again, a subject for another day probably, but that should be discussed, I think. Right here, yes. Look at if you're between 18 and 20, no parking on either side of the block. So why would, if I'm building a shared driveway project and having just a couple of parking spots, where are the guests going to park here? I don't know. So this needs to be addressed. And I know it's a public works deal again. We have a lot of public works issues, but this is probably bigger than the street widening thing we're talking about. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mike. All right.
Mr. Chair, if
go ahead.
any of the, hello.
Yes, go ahead, please.
We have public works officials here who joined us. I can't see the participants, but if any public works officials want to make any comment about the fee in lieu of point that was brought up or about the paving widening, please go ahead and raise your hand.
In the meantime, Tyrone McDaniel has his hand raised.
Okay, thank you, Tammy.
Yes, I just had a comment as it relates to the street widening and a few personal experiences, and two fellow committee members have kind of alluded to it. But I know of, specifically in Acres Home, 2 different projects and a third project, I can't recall the part of town, but where we opted not to do the development. One I was just a consultant on, but they opted not to do development because of the street widening requirements that were there. And so, and these are, my focus is in affordable housing. So, because of cost, sometimes it causes projects not to get done because of being able to widen that street. And so, as Dishberger said, they opted to move to a different property because of that. So I don't know what the solution would be, but if there was maybe a more collaborative way, they've alluded bonds, or some type of better way for the city and developers wanting to do this to kind of figure out some ways where projects can still get done without compromising safety. So that's just my personal experience that I wanted to share in that context too.
I think Sunny was frozen, and so he might be coming back on. Ahmed Ghali with Public Works. Oh, Sunny, you're muted.
Yes, I'm back now. Sorry, I got frozen. All right, can you hear me?
Yes. So Ahmed Ghali with Public Works would like to speak to address some questions.
Yes, please do.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ahmed Ghali, ME, here in the OCE traffic section. Just a small comment about why the no parking signs. These requirements came after discussion with the fire department, and it's for safety issue, and it was put in the IDM based on recommendations for the fire department for the no parking. Yeah.
Yes.
Because if you allow parking, the street would be way too narrow for fire trucks.
Yeah, that is our understanding. But the issue is, as Mike Dishberger said, if there's no parking, then, we all know Rice Military, it ditches on both sides, no place to park. A group of 6 townhomes only have 1 guest parking space. There is no solution. And oddly, we realize, or at least I realize, that we need the safety issue is number 1, especially with the fire department. But again, no parking signs really doesn't really address the issues, as people will park illegally. So thank you so much for your commentary. I think what we need to do is we need to find, a solution that provides both safety and parking. And I don't know what that is. And that's why we have all these people here today. So thank you so much. Anything else before?
No, fine. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. I had seen Mr. McDaniel with your hand up. Sir, are you there?
He already spoke. But Neil Dykeman has his hand raised. That's when you were frozen.
Neil, go right ahead, please.
I don't know what other cities do, but it continues to mystify me and remain nutty that we do our infrastructure developer by developer, project by project. It just doesn't make any sense. This is like let's go have each little home put in a bigger drainage ditch every time you need to fix your driveway, except it does just bottlenecks the water, and we do it all over the city. If you're going to fix the streets in a neighborhood, fix the streets. If you're not going to fix the streets, or it doesn't have to be done, don't have the next new developer widen the street, change the drainage, and just kind of do it piecemeal. That makes no sense. So I don't know what the end solution is. It appears in this case, if I have to pick, I pick option A because at least it reduces something, and definitely don't pick option B. But the whole concept is just a bit nutty.
All right, sir. Thank you. All right, anyone else? So
Peter Friedman, just, yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I really liked Mr. Davis's idea of a fee in lieu of. I think that's a great option, especially if you have a group that's doing affordable housing, then that might give them an option to waive that fee or a fee in lieu of. But I really do agree that doing this piecemeal is very tough to make it worthwhile. I know we run into some very small roads where we have open ditch on both sides. Then we have to also come up with enough room for 5-foot sidewalks in the right of way. And those open ditches are pushed up right against the road. So there really isn't much room there. And we're not allowed to close up open ditch anymore. You couldn't put underground stormwater, which would solve the problem, but because of our flooding issue. So this really is a tough issue. I don't know if there's a perfect solution, but I think asking the second choice, I agree as well. I think that's not going to help. I'd really rather reduce the restrictions right now, let traffic work it, and then have a fee in lieu of if we could make that happen.
Okay. Mushin, did you have any comment based on that?
No, I think it's really helpful to hear the committee members' thoughts because when we have the internal discussion with Houston Public Works, and we also had a hard time to decide which one is better. Regarding the fee in lieu, it's also kind of like a lot more one need to dig into to find out whether it's feasible or not. It is a complicated process, but I'm glad to hear the committee members' feedback.
All right. Tammy, I see Mr. Davis again.
Correct.
All right, Mr. Davis, go ahead, please.
The good thing about your work in this regulatory framework is that you're surfacing problems that cannot easily be addressed on a regulatory basis. That this is a question of city fiscal policy around bond financing for infrastructure improvement. You can do infrastructure improvement on a planned basis, which we don't do citywide plans. The planning comes from the market, and that's fine. And so you need to have a structure that allows the market to stimulate capital spending in a rational way. So this is a call for strategic thinking across departments in order to inform public policy around public finance of infrastructure at a scale and a pace that fits with the market. And I haven't seen a better example of it. And I'm sure there are other opportunities that will pop up. But this, in my mind, serves as an example of how to create these mini call to arms around strategies to address problems in the city that are eminently addressable. This city is big enough, there's no problem to float a bond on an incremental basis. It might require going to the legislature to make a change. I'm not sure, I don't know it, the bond finance process in the city enough to know, but to have developers make a payment in lieu of the fee or make a fee payment that would go into a fund that is initially financed through bonds. You can determine what number of developments get done annually on average and determine what that fund size should be. And that can supplement the capital improvement process that you already have in place. It need not override the capital improvement processes already in place. It couldn't supplement it. So I just think that this ought to point to a focus within the city's building apparatus to make that happen.
All right, sir. Thank you so very much. All right, I don't show anyone else with their hands up. Tammy, do you?
Not either.
Pardon me?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you. Mushan, did you want to? So right now, it looks to be like we have brought up the idea of a fee in lieu of, and then alternately removing it piecemeal approach from chapter 42 seems to be the consensus of the group. Oh, Bill Dykeman.
Yep.
Sonny,
Go ahead, sir.
I would like the fee in lieu of isn't an awful idea, but the implementation of it, staff would need to really think through what was proposing. Some very obvious issues that I can imagine arising are if you've got a neighborhood with a bunch of development that's kind of feeding into that fund and nothing happens, right? The people that put up that cash are obviously going to be annoyed. And if the cash that comes in from a neighborhood biases what infrastructure gets done first, that's going to create a very interesting, shall we say, impact on capital planning. Does that mean that my neighborhood, which is not turning over versus yours that is going to be last on the list, even though I've got the worst street problem? So I think one would have to be very careful using this fee for service model, even if it's trying to solve the cash, kind of the who does the work problem from driving capital decisions. I'm back to, if the city needs to fix more streets in the neighborhoods, it needs to get the money to do it and not involve the developers at all. And if it doesn't think the streets need fixing, it needs to let the developers build what they need to build and not have to deal with the street. But any middle ground here just seems a little, it just suboptimal. But the fee in lieu of service, I would have the concern that it would create some weird biases at one point or other in the capital planning process.
All right, thank you, sir. All right. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, Savita here.
Yes, Savita, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you all for that input. And this was definitely difficult for us to think about the alternatives and what can and cannot be done, keeping in mind the scope of the Livable Places Committee's work. For now, I want to ask, is it safe to assume that the first option, which is removing it from chapter 42, is what we want, but all of the input you provided and the fee in lieu of option will be considered in the future through maybe collaboration between planning and public works, and it may be a bigger initiative than what our scope covers today. So I just wanted to find out if we can take it as consensus that option one is what we're doing right now.
Yeah, I would say so based on the comment that we've had so far. Any comments, subcommittee members, on item number 1, alternative versus 2? Then hearing none, I will consider that consensus. So yes, 1 over number 2, Savita.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much, committee, for that input.
Thank you, everyone. All right. All right, so Mushin, are we done? We move on to homework activities with Tammy?
Yes, sir. So Tammy will present homework activities and expectations for the next meeting.
All right, I'll remind everyone that we are back at school and Tammy has homework for us. So Tammy.
Homework. So as Savita presented earlier in this meeting about the draft language for the residential buffering standards, that is going to be posted on Let's Talk Houston and on our planning website to be able to access not just committee members, but also to the general public. But as a homework activity, committee members, please read through it, provide the feedback on it. That way, this is the language that will be moving forward with whatever edits to go to the Planning Commission and then ultimately to City Council. So please look through that, get us your feedback. And then also we are going to be posting an article either later today or in the next couple days that you can read at your pleasure. It's about front yards, patios, just kind of the neighborhood feel and kind of an upward trend in some sort of front outdoor living space. So go ahead and find that, not now, but very soon. And then also, sorry, on Let's Talk Houston, if there's any committee meetings that you would like us to come to you to present, please still let us know for engagement.
All right, so Tammy, the feedback that you are wanting is going to be actually on letstalkhouston.org livable places on the buffering board. So it'll actually be there for an opportunity to feedback, or did you want that done separately by committee members?
I think on Let's Talk Houston is fine. It will be posted where part of that forum aspect can still be there. If there's a lot of red lines, then it might be easy enough to email it to us. But you know, that engage in the forum part of it would be a useful tool.
Excellent. Okay. All right. All right. Questions, anyone, with regard to our homework? Again, go to Let's Talk Houston or the Planning Department website to find the articles as well as the buffering ordinance, so we can get your input on all of that, of the language that's being used, and if you have any questions or comments on that. And so, Tammy, if that concludes your portion, we'll move on to item number 7, which is public comment.
So I have 4 individuals listed. Some may have already needed to step out, but the first is a Richard M.
All right, Richard, are you there?
Yeah, hey guys, I just turned on my camera.
Go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Richard Mazzarino. I've been an Interloop home builder for 16 years. I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in about the front doors facing the street idea that was widely discussed today. Our customers have never really asked us for a plan with front doors facing the streets or front yards. One of the biggest selling points of our homes inside the loop is backyard space and privacy. The pictures in the PowerPoint, Mike was right. They were all gated and nearly all of the front doors are solid so that people walking by can't peer into your family's home. There are homes all over Houston that are dilapidated and run down that look completely unoccupied, but have their front doors that face the street. So I would disagree that simply having a front door facing the street implies occupancy. The idea of eyes on the street from ground story rooms is misguided in my opinion. The way our customers see this proposal is not eyes on the street, it's whose eyes are leering into our family's home. Our customers are more concerned about privacy and security than I've ever seen in almost 20 years now. We're doing more safety window film, privacy film, and solid front doors than we have ever before, because people, A, don't want others to be able to walk by and look into their homes, and B, they're so concerned about crime in our city that they're afraid someone's going to smash their front door. We're installing more cameras and security devices like glass break sensors than we have at any prior time, and every home now that we're building has a gate protecting the front door from direct street access. Crime, privacy, and a sense of security are 3 major points all of our customers bring up as most important to them. The crime wave our city's been experiencing for the past 2 years or so isn't just confined to certain areas of our city, it's all over. Crime is on everyone's mind, and rightfully so. There have been follow home robberies from the Galleria and in River Oaks, shootout at the Post Oak Hotel, gunfights in Afton Oaks and Tanglewood. Crime is really becoming an issue in our city. And in my opinion, front doors facing the street won't achieve eyes on the street, because it's really the reverse that most of our homeowners are caring about, whose eyes are in their house.
Time.
All right. Oh, all right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Richard. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right. The next speaker, Tammy.
Next is Ron Petit.
Mr. Petit, are you there? Ron Petit? Or is it Pettit?
Oh, maybe. Pettit.
Okay. Mr. Pettit? No, we'll go to the next one. I'll call him at the end.
Next is Ricky Cardenas Jr.
All right, Mr. Cardenas? Ricky
Hello, can you hear me?
Cardenas? Yeah, we can hear you, sir. Go right ahead.
I apologize. The audio is bad. I'm on the bus right now. Yeah, I'm not here to speak on either side as far as the or facing. I was just curious. I don't know how or facing the street may
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Cardenas, can you up your volume? You're very distorted. We can't really hear you.
Yeah, sorry. Wanted to hear more about the safety of a front door facing the street versus not facing the street.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I did understand you. You said you want to hear more information regarding the front door facing or not facing the street?
Yes, and how is that safer?
I'm sorry, how is that what?
How is it safer?
Okay, so I would say, staff, are we going to have any of this information on the website? Not yet, I wouldn't think.
No, it's in the ordinance right now. It's a requirement that is in the ordinance that was established years ago. We were just trying to bring more clarity to the requirement. The information is already within Muni Code Houston.
Okay, so can we give Mr. Cardenas a specific place to find that information?
Yes, sure. I'll put our phone number in the chat, and then he can call for Savida Bandy, and I'll be able to answer his questions.
All right, Mr. Cardenas, did you hear that? You're muted right now.
I did hear you. I got it. Thank you.
Okay, so look in the chat, sir, and ask for Savida Bandy, and she'll give you the information that you need, so you'll get more specific answers to your question.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Tammy, our speaker number 4.
Speaker number 4 is Preston Wood, which may or may not have had to step out.
Okay, Preston Wood. Preston Wood, are you there? Okay, let me go back to Ron Pettit. Ron Pettit. Okay, and then I see someone who is not a committee member with their hand raised. Are there any other people who wanted to address the subcommittee? And I see Patricia Spikes.
Yes, I had one quick question. Is the things that we're talking about on the ordinance, is that referring to newly developed neighborhoods, or would that be citywide?
Savita, I will let you answer that question if you could.
It is for new developments coming up within the city limits.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Spikes. Anyone else that wants to address the subcommittee? All right, then. Hearing none, I see that we are, Savita, did you want to wrap up or give any other comments before we close?
No, sir, I think just in closing, the next meeting is on not July, but October.
July, October 4. Yes.
Sorry, I'll unshare that, but the next meeting is in October. Let me give the date. It's October 4th.
Okay.
And we will probably take questions on the ordinance, and we may have more ordinance pieces ready by then. So that's what we will be discussing during the October 4th meeting. And I request all of the committee members, you have a deadline of 2 weeks to give me comments on the residential buffering so we can take it to the Planning Commission. And I appreciate all of the time you gave us today, and thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so very much, Savita. Again, committee members, I will ask you to go there to look for the buffering ordinance information, because I won't be in Planning Commission in 2 weeks, so I won't be embarrassed, but Lisa Clark will be. So please get in there, take a look around, input your information so that we can have as much as that before we present to the committee. If there's no other discussion and no other comments, I will now adjourn this meeting. Everyone, thank you so very much for being here. Have a great weekend. Mr. Davis, did you have a public comment?
Yes, real quick, just a request that Savita include the surprise cameo photograph of a beautiful child in the next presentation.
Correction, that is Dipti's kid, but yes, definitely.
Yeah, that's actually all the Planning Commission members, we all have that on our phone. We all save that. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Davis. It's Suvita and Dipti and everyone else. Thank you so very much. Great meeting today. Lots of information to take in. But again, everyone, very proud of the work that you've all helped us put together and are doing in Livable Places. And you are really making a difference in the way the city is going to move forward. So everyone, Thank you so very much. It's Tuesday, right? Have a great week. Have a great week and enjoy. We'll see you next month.
Thank you all.
Thanks, honey.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Great job, everybody.